the determination you're asking for is based on things that you are determining that the Secretary of State has considered and evaluated. We don't evaluate that, the administration, along with a partnership with the Department of State, on what is political speech and what's an affiliation with a foreign terrorist organization.
Do you believe?
That's the difference between the two that you're asking.
That you can detain and deport a legal permanent resident for expressing a political opinion?
We have not detained we have not deported anybody who's a legal permanent resident or a citizen of the United States.
Then say you don't have the ability to do that.
We have
clarify that for the
true.
Millions of.
That is exactly what I'm doing, is that we have followed exactly what the law is, and that we have not detained or deported anybody who's a citizen or has legal status in this country. We are focused on the worst of the worst dangerous criminals.
You do not believe you have
to get them out of the country.
You do not believe you have the ability to do that.
We have not done that at all, and the Trump administration has no plans
well, just
to
because
do
you haven't
that.
done it doesn't mean that you won't do it in the future.
We are following
do you believe you have the ability to do that or not?
That we are doing.
I think you were going to.
The exact appropriate thing in partnership with the Department of State and in partnership with the Trump administration.
Welcome back, patriots, to Right View Nation, where we pull back the curtain on the lies, expose the agenda of the radical left, and stand firm for faith, family, and freedom. If you're sick and tired of the media spinning every story against America, you're in the right place. Today, we're diving into an explosive exchange that happened between South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem and Senator Chris Murphy. What you're about to hear is not just a political disagreement. It's a stark, crystal-clear moment that shows exactly what's at stake in our republic. Now, the topic might sound like legalese to some, talk of visas, deportations, court orders, but let me tell you, it's much, much deeper than that. This is about sovereignty, security, and the soul of our nation. So buckle up, patriots. Let's break it down.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, AI is an enormous growing industry critical to the future economic health of the country. We have had the benefit over the years of the top talent in AI, researchers, students coming to the United States to help us grow that industry. But for the first time in the last 15 years, there are more top talented individuals and workers in AI leaving the country than coming here. And the reason is pretty simple. People who are coming here to work from overseas through the visa program are very uncertain about what their rights are. And that is because of the actions this administration has taken. So I think it's important to get on the record for those individuals who are here currently and those thinking of coming to the United States to work or to study to understand what their rights are. So let me ask you a series of pretty simple questions. Probably the key of right amongst the 5 freedoms is the right to free speech, the right to express your own personal opinion about politics, culture, the economy. Do you believe that you have the right to detain or deport a U.S. citizen for simply expressing their political opinion, a U.S. citizen?
No.
No. Do you believe that you have the right to detain or deport a legal permanent resident for expressing their political opinion?
I don't make decisions on legal status here in the United States. The Department of State does that, and I would say that as they've gone through an evaluation of who gets a visa, who gets legal status, green cards, they've been evaluating and discussing how that applies.
Well,
to
I acknowledge that you don't. I acknowledge you don't make. Right. But if someone is a legal permanent resident of the United States, I'm not talking about an H-1B or a student visa holder. I'm talking about a legal permanent resident. If you are a legal permanent resident, do you have the right to detain or deport that person simply for expressing their political opinion?
The Department of State makes those decisions.
No,
and the
they
Department
don't.
of Homeland Security.
You make that decision about who you have the right to detain or deport. So you are involved in that. Do you believe the United States, do you believe the law allows?
The Department of Homeland Security under the Trump administration is enforcing the law, following the constitutional rights of folks who are here as citizens, those who are here legally, and those who are here illegally.
So a legal permanent resident is by definition here legally. Do you believe, I mean, I think this is really troubling if you can't answer this simple question. Do you believe that the U.S. government can detain and deport a legal permanent resident for expressing a political opinion that the administration disagrees with?
The determination you're asking for is based on things that you are determining that the Secretary of State has considered and evaluated. We don't evaluate that, the administration, along with the partnership with the Department of State, on what is political speech and what's an affiliation with a foreign terrorist
Do
organization.
you believe?
That's the difference
Do
between
you
the two
believe
that you're asking.
that you can detain
We
and
follow
deport
the
a
direction of
legal
federal
permanent
law.
resident for expressing a political
We have
opinion?
not detained we have not deported anybody who's a legal permanent resident or a citizen of the United States.
Then say you don't have the ability to do that.
We have
clarify that for
is
the
true.
millions of.
That is exactly what I'm doing, is that we have followed exactly what the law is, and that we have not detained or deported anybody who's a citizen or has legal status in this country. We are focused on the worst of the worst dangerous criminals.
You do not believe you have
to get them out of the
You do not believe
country.
you have the ability to do that.
We have not done that at all, and the Trump administration has no plans
Well, just
to
because
do
you haven't
that.
done
We
it
do
doesn't
not
mean
do
that
it.
you won't do it in the
We
future.
are
Do you
following the
believe you have the
federal law
ability to do
ensure
that or not?
we are doing
I think you were gonna- I
the exact
think-
appropriate
I think-
thing in partnership with the Department of State and in partnership with the Trump administration.
Have you read I assume you have read the Supreme Court decision in the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia?
Yes.
That court decision requires the administration to facilitate Kilmar Abrego Garcia's release from El Salvador. Can you describe the steps that you have taken to facilitate this release? And specifically, can you answer as to whether you have reached out to your counterpart in El Salvador to facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's release?
Abrego Garcia is a citizen of El Salvador and should never have been in this country and will not be coming back to this country. There is no scenario where Abrego Garcia will be in the United States again. If he were to come back, we would immediately deport him again because he is a terrorist, he's a human smuggler, and he is a wife beater.
You've read the Supreme Court decision. Does the Supreme Court decision not require you to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia?
The Trump administration is complying with all court orders and judges' orders.
Does the Supreme Court order require you to facilitate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia?
Is a
Yes or-
citizen of
yes
El
or no?
Salvador. It is up to the president of the El Salvador to make the decision.
You're a defendant
on
in
if
the
he
case.
is coming back. It's been a big topic of conversation between all of us, between the country. When the president visited the United States of America, it was discussed and talked about there. The president has been very clear on this issue, as the Secretary of State, and I have as well. Abrego Garcia is not a citizen of this country and is a dangerous individual who does not belong here.
I will not ask another question, Madam Chair.
But the discussion, we would immediately
But the discussion
deport him.
ends when the Supreme Court rules 9-0 that you have to facilitate his release. And the fact that you can't even acknowledge the wording of the order, which commands you to facilitate his release, and you advertise to this committee that you are going to willfully ignore the ruling, and that is
not
incredibly
true,
chilling
Senator.
for
I
the
do
balance
not-
of powers
that is
in
not true.
a democracy that relies on the executive branch to honor decisions made by the highest court of the land.
So in this Senate hearing, Chris Murphy, your classic polished East Coast liberal, goes after Kristi Noem with this smug, condescending tone, trying to trap her into some ideological box. He keeps demanding that she say whether or not the Trump administration has the legal right to deport a legal permanent resident for political speech. And you know what? This is exactly what the left does. They create these hypothetical moral dilemmas, twist the facts, and try to paint patriots as villains. But Kristi Noem? She held her ground like a true American, calm, composed, and laser-focused on the law, not the drama. She made it clear, we're not going after people for speech. We're going after criminals. Full stop. Let's take a moment to talk about this free speech angle Murphy keeps hammering. Of course, we believe in free speech. It's one of our God-given rights, enshrined in the Constitution. But let's be real, that freedom isn't, and shouldn't be, a shield for those who come into our country and use that freedom to undermine us. We are a sovereign nation, not a doormat. You want to come to America legally, respect our values, work hard, raise a family? Welcome. But if you're here to spread anti-American propaganda, associate with terrorists, or subvert the country that gave you refuge, then no, you do not belong here. Kristi Noem understood that. She wasn't being evasive, she was being careful. Because unlike Murphy, she's not playing political games. She's defending America's right to determine who gets to stay and who needs to go. That's called leadership. Now here's where it gets really outrageous. Senator Murphy brings up a Supreme Court decision involving Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a citizen of El Salvador, who he insists should be returned to the United States. Yep, you heard that right. He wants this guy back in America. Now let me tell you who this man is. He's not some innocent immigrant. Garcia has been labeled a terrorist, a human smuggler, and, get this, a wife-beater. And Chris Murphy wants to bring him back to the United States? Why? Because of a court technicality? Because of some diplomatic process? Let me say this loud and clear for the folks in the back. This man does not belong in the United States. Period. Kristi Noem hit the nail on the head when she said there is no scenario where Garcia should be allowed back. She called him dangerous, and she's absolutely right. She's not just protecting legal statutes, she's protecting the American people. Now the left loves to scream about the rule of law when it benefits them. But where were they during the riots of 2020? Where were they when criminals were torching businesses and assaulting police officers? Where were they when cities were declaring themselves sanctuary zones and thumbing their noses at federal law? But now, suddenly, they're legal purists? Please, let me tell you something. The executive branch has every right to interpret how it applies Supreme Court decisions, especially when it involves international actors and national security. The Constitution doesn't say, Supreme Court rulings are absolute even if they put Americans in danger. Noem made it clear. She's cooperating with the State Department, following the proper channels, and putting America first. And that's the difference. Chris Murphy is playing checkers. Kristi Noem is playing chess for the soul of the country. Let's not kid ourselves, folks. This isn't just about one man, one court case, or one Senate hearing. This is about a broader agenda. The radical left wants to erase borders, soften laws, and flood this nation with individuals who do not share our values. They want to create confusion, dismantle patriotism, and use judicial activism to sidestep democratic accountability. They want to trap us in these endless legal games while real threats roam free. They label people like Kristi Noem extreme, while pushing for open borders, gender ideology in schools, and now, apparently, inviting criminals back into our country. No patriots. We see what's happening, and we will not be silent. Kristi Noem didn't back down, and neither will we. She stood up for law and order. She stood up for American families. She stood up for a future where our children can grow up safe, proud, and free. And Chris Murphy? He showed us exactly what kind of leadership the left wants. Soft on crime, soft on sovereignty, and hostile to truth. We can't afford to sit this one out. We need more leaders like Noem. Unafraid to face down the mob, unshaken by media pressure, and unapologetically American. So here's your call to action, patriots. Backhand index pointing right, like this video. Backhand index pointing right, share it with your friends. Backhand index pointing right, subscribe to Right View Nation for more hard-hitting truth. Backhand index pointing right, and most importantly, stay informed, stay bold, and stay proud of this great country. Because the fight for America isn't coming. It's already here. And we're not backing down. United States, God bless you. God bless Kristi Noem. And God bless the United States of America.